some women always seem to be extremely elegant and sophisticated. Their secret is not wearing super expensive brands, but rather drawing inspiration from a specific label that makes any woman look wealthy. That's why, in today's video, I'm going to show you the main trends and tricks you need to use to get inspired by a brand that seems set to be very successful in 2026. I'm talking about Ralph Lauren, so come with me. The first trend that appeared in the Ralph Lauren runway show, and one we can't fail to mention, is boho super elegant, sophisticated, but this time with a deeper touch. Here, we'll see florals with darker backgrounds. We'll also see the presence of paisley, but this time a little more faded. Nothing too obvious. The idea here is to bring that bohemian vibe, to bring boho chic, which I know you love, but in a much more sophisticated and softer way, so you won't see that boho with a raw bohemian look. You'll see something more sublime, more delicate. It was also possible to notice plenty of combinations of boho with brown. Lots of gemstones, especially when it comes to accessories. For example, necklaces with plenty of stones to bring that bohemian touch. The use of suede and leather also appears, adding a more sensorial feel that fits perfectly with this aesthetic. Faux fur comes this time to add a bit more of that glam touch. Remember I mentioned that in 2026 we would see a strong presence of glamorous boho? Well, it came through strongly in this show. And of course, we also had the presence of sheer fabrics, but in this case, very soft, paired with florals, paired with tones leaning toward burgundy and purples, which makes this transparency much more elegant and sophisticated. Ruffles also showed up on the runway, but nothing over the top or too bold. The idea is that they are strategic ruffles. They are large, but they don't come in excess. And of course, depending on your personal style, you can add more or fewer ruffles. However, keep in mind that ruffles are also very popular because of boho chic. In other words, it's a very strong trend, and, as you can see here, one that will appear in a slightly more sober, darker version, especially when we're talking about fall and winter. So, those who thought boho would only be used in summer and that it couldn't be worn outside summer were mistaken. It remains very strong throughout 2026, in summer, fall, and winter. But when we talk about fall and winter, it will come in darker, more sober tones, darker backgrounds, especially in florals. And of course, the presence of leather, fur, and suede, bringing more weight and a stronger sensorial feel. If your style is boho or creative, this works very well for you. If your style is more sophisticated and elegant, but you always wanted to try the bohemian touch and didn't know how, this is an incredible inspiration for you to use in your wardrobe. It doesn't need to be obvious. Sometimes, just a few touches of this trend can completely transform your look. Number 2 is riding boots. Riding boots are part of the Ralph Lauren aesthetic, and of course, they are a classic piece, a timeless piece, and a very sophisticated piece. Riding boots, without a doubt, were one of the items that showed up the most throughout the entire runway. And of course, it's a piece we always see, both in this brand and in others that have a more classic and sophisticated touch. What's interesting in this last show is that you'll see them styled with pants, skirts, and dresses, showing that yes, it's possible to pair riding boots with a wide variety of outfits. The interesting part is that these boots are very comfortable. Usually, they don't come with heels, or when they do, it's a smaller, lower heel, making them ideal for everyday wear. This is a piece you can wear mainly in fall and winter, but you can also be a little bolder and wear them in summer, especially for evening events. This is a totally timeless piece. That means you'll be able to wear it throughout your whole life. And with that in mind, I recommend choosing a high-quality piece, preferably, if you like, real leather, because then you'll have a piece that will last so long you won't need to buy another. If you take good care of leather, it's eternal. Another detail regarding colors. Besides traditional black, we also see shades like brown, which work very well, especially for women for whom black can feel a little heavy. That's my case. Black on me looks a bit harsh, a bit exaggerated, and gives that under-eye circle effect. Of course, since we're talking about shoes, they're on your feet, so it doesn't impact as much. But what happens is that it doesn't always match other items in my wardrobe. So what I usually do is opt for brown. And I'm enchanted when I see these brown compositions, as you can see on the screen. For the girls who don't like riding boots because they think they're too flat or without heels, another option would be knee-high boots. In this case, they can come with some type of heel, regardless of the height, and still work very well. Of course, knee-high boots are not necessarily very classic, but this is a boot height that is generally more traditional. That means it's hard to go wrong. My tip is, don't buy a boot that's too exaggerated or overloaded with details, because often we end up buying something trendy, and then it only stays fashionable for that moment. You just followed the trend for the sake of it. You didn't buy something you truly liked. You know that here on the channel, I always say, if you like it and can afford it, even if it's just a passing fad in the Labubu style, I have no problem with that. I think everyone enjoys fashion in their own way, so if it's something you like, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you're thinking of a piece that will last, I wouldn't tell you, for example, to buy a very tall boot that goes up to the thigh, because you won't be able to wear it as often unless you're very creative and very fashion forward. If you're a more basic, minimalist woman, I'd say the length below the knee is the one that will flatter most women, regardless of body type or height. So, if you're thinking about a piece that's worth your investment, worth your money, something you'll buy in 2026 and it will last until 2030 or even 2040, I'd say a good pair of leather boots, preferably real leather, will work really well. If you don't like leather, no problem. You can go for synthetic leather, but be aware that, unfortunately, it won't last as long because technology still isn't perfect. But maybe, buying from a good brand, you'll find one with greater durability. Either way, this is a piece that works beautifully with dresses, skirts, or pants. You can wear them tucked underneath or over. In this last show, we saw both options, over pants for example, and under skirts, so you can style them in different ways. If your style is classic, elegant, and you love that rich woman vibe, this is a piece that simply cannot be missing from your wardrobe. Number 3 is the presence of shades such as brown, caramel, and khaki. If you are a woman who enjoys the elegant style, that rich woman aesthetic, you've surely noticed the strong presence of brown, beige, caramel, and khaki in more sophisticated outfits. Many times, we get too attached to black and white. Black and white are very elegant, very sophisticated, but they often end up giving a luxurious yet overly simple vibe because it's the color combination everyone chooses for daily wear. Black pants, a white blouse. So, it lacks creativity. What you can do, especially if your wardrobe is based on black and white, is to add some pieces that bring in these shades beige, khaki, caramel, or brown. These earthier tones are very much in style for 2026. In fact, Cocoa Brown was chosen as one of the colors of the year for 2026, but know that you can choose any shade. You might go for a brick brown, a caramel tone, or a darker, more sober brown. You don't need to stick only to the trending shade, okay? You can choose whatever works for you. Looking at the runway, we saw a strong presence of coats, jackets, and blazers in brown or caramel tones, which bring that earthy yet sophisticated touch. The interesting thing when buying a piece in brown is to know whether it's a cooler or warmer brown, because this can indeed affect how it looks on you. So, if you don't know your color palette, whether you're summer, winter, autumn, or spring, the first tip I give you is to figure out whether you suit cooler or warmer tones. For example, my palette is cool, so cocoa brown works really well for me, but an orange-leaning brown, like terracotta, doesn't suit me as well. That's why it's important to keep this in mind, so you choose shades that enhance your features, and there's truly a shade of brown for everyone. It's rare to find someone who doesn't look good in brown. The difference is whether they look better in darker or lighter, warmer or cooler shades. I really like the variation of browns we saw in this runway show, and I also loved how they were paired with black. We saw many looks combining brown with white and black, usually with a third piece like a long coat, a blazer, or a jacket. In other words, it's very easy to bring into your wardrobe. You don't need to buy a coat, jacket, or sweater from this brand specifically. You can take a picture from this video and search online for something similar. The idea here is inspiration. We look, we get inspired, and from that, we create looks to use in our daily lives. Besides coats and jackets, brown bags, boots, and accessories are excellent. They come to replace the classic little black piece. So, if you're tired of buying black shoes and black bags, choosing some items in brown will be simply amazing and will add great value to your wardrobe. Sometimes, black can age you a little, girls. It can emphasize fine lines. So, choosing a shade that's not so dark or so heavy might be the missing touch to highlight your beauty. Be mindful of this, and you'll see how much more valued your wardrobe and your appearance will become. So, will you leave black aside and dive into the brown trend during 2026? Number 4 is the elegant and sober office aesthetic. Here we have a variety of pieces that bring that workplace feel with a bit more tailoring and structured cuts. The idea is to bring elements from the men's wardrobe while blending them into the feminine aesthetic, creating a contrast that, in this case, complements beautifully. We'll see a strong presence of leather combined with tailoring. There's also a mix of textures. For example, smoother, shinier leather paired with suede or wool, creating that contrast between textures that makes any look feel more refined and interesting. We also saw the presence of skirts, such as a more fitted pencil skirt. There were looks with the classic blazer and trousers combination, a very interesting set. Beige was also highlighted. In addition, there was special attention to the neckline area, with ruffles, ties, and other details that draw attention to the chest. Ruffles were very well placed, even appearing at the bottom of long sleeves in some looks. In short, the idea is to bring an office core aesthetic, but with a slightly creative touch, not that exaggerated creative style that feels unwearable, but rather an extremely sophisticated creativity. We saw a lot of black and white, but usually with a small touch of brown, or looks prioritizing combinations with khaki, which brings that rich woman vibe. I always mention here on the channel how looks in shades like khaki and cream give that refined, wealthy aesthetic. If you like this aesthetic, investing in these colors is one of the best choices you can make. Tailoring always brings elegance and sophistication, and if you're naturally drawn to this style, you can and should get inspired by these workplace-inspired pieces. They even work perfectly for going out if you enjoy this more traditional aesthetic, so don't get stuck thinking, I can't wear a blazer to lunch. If it's part of your style and you like it, wear it without fear. As you can see in the images playing, it's a fantastic idea. And tell me, what's your style? Do you enjoy this rich woman aesthetic? If you're here, I believe you love this more elegant style. Let me know in the comments. You know your comment also influences other subscribers here on the channel, right? We're a big community, so I count on your participation. And of course, you help me a lot by commenting the magic words of the day, which today are Ralph Lauren 2026. I count on your support to keep bringing new videos here every day. While you comment, let's continue with the video. Number 5 is floral. Floral is making a comeback in fashion. In fact, it's hard for floral to ever truly go out of style, but this time it reappears with a darker background, still within that boho aesthetic, but a little heavier. So, we'll see deep green, deep purple, black, and brown backgrounds adding more weight. This romantic yet moody touch fits perfectly with the collection and works very well for women who love florals but don't want that overly childish, girly vibe instead. They want something bolder and more dramatic. The idea behind this floral is usually that it looks like a painting. It doesn't look like a typical print. It looks hand-painted. It's softer, more delicate, and often paired with sheer fabrics. When choosing a floral piece, it's also very interesting if the garment has movement, so when you walk, it's important that the fabric is lighter, because this works beautifully with this type of print. This darker floral is often called winter floral because of the deeper background, but it can be worn in any season, especially if you belong to a deeper color palette. So, deep winter and deep autumn work very well with it. This dark background floral is also easier to combine when we're talking about more sophisticated, sober looks. It pairs easily with a blazer or a long coat in equally dark and deep tones because they complement each other. On the other hand, when we take those very sweet, delicate florals, the soft pinks, the baby blues, it can be harder to bring in that sense of sobriety. So, if you are a woman who prefers a more sophisticated, elegant touch, maybe with a hint of glamour, I'd say this darker floral will fit your wardrobe much better than those lighter, summer-like florals in pale pinks, blues, or yellows. Those are solar, fun, beautiful, and feminine, but they don't carry the same sophistication, leaning more towards sweetness and romance. Therefore, if you are an extremely elegant woman and find it difficult to incorporate florals into your daily style, this is a perfect way to start bringing the print into your wardrobe. Number 6 is the presence of gray and plaid. As you know, plaid has emerged as one of the main print trends. We're going to see a wide variety of plaid pieces in 2026. And here we can include all types of plaid, girls from more alternative looking styles to more sophisticated ones. So there's plaid for everyone's taste. And of course, we also see the return of gray. Gray is reappearing in the 2026 aesthetic as a new neutral. This means that, just like brown, it comes to replace black. So, all those looks we would normally build with black can now be recreated with gray. And we'll have an immense variety of options here. Skirts, pants, coats, sweaters, a huge range of possibilities. The fact is, gray reappeared a few years ago and is now very much in fashion. What I like most about gray, besides the fact that it's not as heavy, is that it brings a touch of personality. It's a color that isn't often chosen. Generally, most people go for the traditional black and white, or they're drawn to bold colors, cobalt blue, red, orange, green, and gray tends to be forgotten. So, when someone wears gray, to me it shows a lot of personality, and it works especially well for those with soft color palettes. Soft autumn and soft summer, for example, match beautifully with gray. It reduces contrast and enhances natural beauty. It also flatters women with white or gray hair. If your hair is white, you should try wearing gray, not too light, but a slightly darker shade, almost near black, because it will complement your skin and your hair. You'll see how this color really lights up your beauty. And so it doesn't feel like an all gray look, you can always combine it with other shades. In Ralph Lauren's runway show, we saw many combinations of gray with white and brown, especially chocolate brown and milk chocolate, browns that aren't too deep, which add richness. I loved the presence of gray. I thought it looked beautiful, and paired with plaid, it becomes extremely sophisticated. If you're a woman who loves the rich woman aesthetic but finds black too heavy or unflattering, gray might be the shade missing from your wardrobe. Go to a store and try it on, because that's how it is, girls. We need to test things. You don't need to buy everything, but at least try it out. See what works with your beauty. If it works, write it down so you don't forget. Next time you go shopping, you'll know exactly which colors highlight you best. Number 7 is jackets, vests, and blazers in leather. Leather had a strong presence in the Ralph Lauren runway show, both in tops and bottoms. We also saw many leather pants, but here I'd like to highlight the upper pieces, especially when we talk about jackets or garments that serve the role of outerwear. When we talk about a leather jacket, for example, we're talking about a timeless piece, something you can wear for the rest of your life. One tip regarding leather jackets: if you want a piece that will last a long time, besides choosing a higher quality material, I recommend going for a more classic, more timeless cut. If you choose, for example, a model with prints, heavy branding, or very specific references or designs, it might not feel as timeless. So my tip is, since we're talking about a piece meant to last forever, something you'll keep for life, choose something more classic, nothing too exaggerated. I know we're in a fashion moment full of spikes, eyelets, and studs. I've even shared pieces with those metallic details before. But when we're talking about a more sophisticated, elegant, timeless look, less is more. Therefore, go for a classic style. If you don't want to spend too much on a leather jacket, go to a thrift store. Thrift shops usually have a large variety of jackets, including leather ones. They might have some imperfections, but you can send the jacket to be restored, or even try to restore it yourself at home. Be very careful with extremely cheap leather jackets. Usually, they're made of synthetic leather. In other words, imitation leather. It's very likely that such a piece will peel and fall apart after 6 months, so we need to be careful, because sometimes that bargain ends up costing more in the long run. It's better to own a comfortable, beautiful, durable leather jacket that will be with you for life, even if it costs a little more, than to buy a very cheap piece that lasts only 1 season. Next year, you'll need to buy another one, and so on. As for colors, this is very personal. You can choose whichever color you prefer, but for timeless pieces, I'd recommend caramel, brown, or black. These 3 are classics and work for most women. If your natural coloring has low contrast, avoid black, as it can feel too harsh. In that case, I'd suggest brown coffee brown, or deep brown, for example. That makes it easier to get it right. If you are a woman with low contrast, say blonde hair, very fair skin, and blue eyes, black can also look heavy, and I'd recommend a lighter tone, such as caramel. It all depends on your coloring and contrast level, which makes a big difference. My advice? Try things on. Go to many stores, take photos in the fitting room, bring them home. Think. Analyze. You don't need to buy anything in a rush. You're not desperate. Always reflect, because this is a durable and more expensive piece, so it's worth considering carefully before purchasing. Don't buy in a hurry, and don't go for the cheapest option that won't last. That way, you won't regret it and won't need to replace it every season. Number 8 is wide belts. Without a doubt, one of the most prominent trends on the runway. As you can see, wide belts are coming in strong, with a huge variety of models. The idea here is to make a statement. If you don't like wide belts and prefer smaller ones, that's fine. All belts will be in style in 2026, but statement belts bigger, bolder, with distinctive buckles will be the highlight. They even appear worn over dresses, bringing in that boho aesthetic. They also show up cinching blazers, adding a more tailored waistline. In other words, there's a belt for every taste. As you can see in the images, the belts presented in Ralph Lauren's show were slightly more sober and mainly came in the double buckle style. So, if you want to replicate the runway look, make sure it has a double buckle, that is, one buckle with two prongs going through the belt. You'll notice that the double buckle has 2 points, one above the other. It's not 2 separate buckles, girls, but a single buckle with 2 closures. This brings a creative yet elegant and sophisticated touch. You'll notice that the buckle is simple, not exaggerated. If you prefer a more creative buckle, is that a problem? Not at all. As I said, the idea is to take inspiration from these looks. You don't need to buy the exact same piece. But if you were already thinking of buying a belt and didn't know how to incorporate it, and if your wardrobe already aligns with the Ralph Lauren aesthetic, then this might be the best belt to choose. There's no need to buy a belt with a rectangular buckle, since we also saw square-shaped ones in the show. But remember, on the runway, we see models tall, slim women with elongated figures. If you're petite, wearing a rectangular buckle could make you look shorter. So, what do? Choose a belt with a slightly smaller buckle. We always need to adapt things to our body type. That way, we highlight our beauty. Belts are affordable pieces. These days, online, it's easy to find many inexpensive options. So, if you're looking for a piece to start experimenting with in the Ralph Lauren-inspired wardrobe, I'd say start with a belt. It's a practical, useful, everyday item, not too expensive, and it's the perfect way to start playing with this style. So, have you already invested in your statement belt for 2026? This trend is shaping up to be one of the year's main highlights. I think it's worth having at least one belt to begin exploring this style. And tell me, are you enjoying this video? If you are, then you need to be subscribed to this channel, because here we have videos every single day, always talking about fashion and beauty, with lots of tips. It's not enough just to talk about trends, we also need to say who they look good on, who they don't, and show you how you can use them in your everyday life. Do you like videos like this? Then go ahead and subscribe. I'll always be here bringing you new videos made with all the love and care for you. While you subscribe and turn on the notification bell, let's keep going with the video. Number 9 is lace. Lace appeared in various details and also in complete looks. We saw a lot of lace in white and black. Lace is always tricky. Some women love it and wear it in full looks, like long dresses, while others don't care for it as much. The detail about lace is that it can look extremely elegant, or it can end up resembling morning attire. My tip: start with details. This way, you can see whether it suits your style or not. Lace dresses are wonderful for warmer seasons, but they can also be worn in colder ones, like fall and winter, usually paired with a long coat, which enhances the outfit beautifully. If you like lace and details, you can opt for accents on the neckline, for example, bringing a romantic touch. Ideally, lace should be made of natural fibers, not synthetics. But if you do choose synthetic lace, be careful. It can be stiff, and the drape isn't as elegant. Many artisans work with lace, so if you can buy directly from one, that's even better. If you go for a lighter shade, like white or beige, it conveys lightness, romance, delicacy, that fairy tale heroine touch. If you choose darker lace, like black, you'll achieve a more vampy effect, powerful and sensual. The choice of lace makes a huge difference, so choose wisely. Another tip: if you're going to invest in lace, stick to neutral colors. White and black are the safest bets. You'll hardly go wrong. Don't buy a cobalt blue lace piece unless you're sure it suits you. It's very striking and not very versatile. What might happen is that your dress arrives before you do. Before you even walk into the event, everyone will have already noticed your cobalt blue lace dress. So, My advice: go for neutral tones. That way, you'll be able to wear the piece more often, and it will highlight your beauty without stealing the spotlight from the person who should shine the most, you. Number 10 is the color white. White appeared frequently in this runway show and comes as a neutral, a basic. It always shows up with a minimalist touch, serving as a base for something more maximalist. White dresses, for example, were styled with black accessories, whether a belt, a bag, or boots. In other words, they work as a foundation, and while they are simple pieces, they bring something extra: transparency, a refined drape, a more fluid fabric, or lace, adding creativity. So, it doesn't need to be that plain white tailoring with nothing else. The idea is to have something distinctive, bringing that touch of essentialism I've mentioned before. One tip I give, which in my opinion has everything to do with the Ralph Lauren aesthetic, is to pair a simple, basic white shirt dress with leather accessories. I'd suggest combining that classic, crisp white shirt dress with leather boots, a leather bag, and a leather belt. For these accessories, you can choose brown, black, gray, or even burgundy. Burgundy is a more creative choice, and one I personally prefer. But if you want something more traditional, you can go for black or brown, especially chocolate brown or cocoa brown, which are darker. This way, you elevate and add creativity to what is otherwise a basic piece. You know I love shirt dresses. I believe a shirt dress, especially for mature women, carries that elegant and sophisticated touch. But sometimes we need to add a more modern detail. Otherwise, it can look aging. So, what should you do? Add interesting accessories, especially leather ones. Leather brings modernity, adds a rebellious edge, and sometimes that's exactly what your look needs to become perfect and striking. Number 11 is the presence of purple. Among the shades presented, the most distinctive in this show was purple. It perfectly aligns with the fresh purple trend that's coming in strong for 2026. This is a topic not everyone likes. Some people really don't care for purple, but I couldn't leave it out because aside from the more traditional colors, purple was undoubtedly the one that stood out the most. We saw it strongly associated with velvet, and that's why I'd say caution is needed. If you're not very fashion forward, I don't recommend it, as it can feel exaggerated. But it didn't only appear in velvet. Purple also showed up in details on other dresses, like silk pieces that were simply stunning. Purple is deep, and just like I mentioned earlier with black lace, it has a vampiric feel, so to speak. It conveys power and luxury. For many years, purple was a color only the wealthiest kings and queens could wear, as the pigment was extremely expensive. Nowadays, anyone can wear it, but it's still a shade that few people actually use. What do I recommend? Focus on a deeper, darker purple, preferably paired with soft, fluid fabrics like silk. That doesn't mean you can't invest in suede or velvet, but for some people it can feel heavy, especially if you're not very fashionista. If you enjoy a distinctive color, purple will suit you well. I particularly like purple for occasions where you need to stand out: graduations, weddings, and more formal events. But, as I said, be careful with the shade. Preferably, let it appear in details, nothing too exaggerated, so it doesn't end up drawing attention in a way you might not like. Another important point is the shade of purple itself. If it's too light, leaning toward lilac, it doesn't flatter everyone. It's better to choose a purple closer to eggplant, which generally suits most women. And beyond these trends that appeared in Ralph Lauren's show, we also have plenty of 90 seconds and 70 seconds inspirations making a comeback in fashion. Want to know which ones? Pick one of these videos. We have both the 90s and the 70s covered, and I'll be waiting for you there.